Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Big Chill Podcast. This is episode 38, Talking Throw-ins with Thomas Grønnemark. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Big Chill Podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Thomas Grønnemark, who's a football coach specializing in throw-ins. He's worked with some really high-profile top European clubs like Liverpool and Ajax. He I believe, held the world record for the world's longest throw. Well, we can get into that later and see, talk about that a little more. But thanks for joining us and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. I'm really delighted to be here. So thanks a lot.
I guess to get off the mark, I think probably a lot of our listeners, and I'm sure you get asked this question a lot. What exactly do you do as a throw-in coach with top football teams? Sort of, what's your goal? What specifically do you work on?
You can say I'm working on two different really specific goals. The first one is keeping possession when my team has a throw-in, and you can also say the opposite. When our opponents have a throw-in, take the ball from them. And then the other thing is creating chances and scoring goals after throw-in situations all around the pitch. So that's the two main goals. And the way I'm doing it is like three different things, is coaching and training the teams on the pitch. So having a lot of different throw-in drills. Then I'm also doing talks for the players, for the head coaches, managers, assistant coaches, so they can see what is the bigger point here. And then I'm also doing throw-in analysis of the matches. So after every match, then I'm getting the attacking, defending throw-ins from the teams, and then I'm sending back a throw-in analysis to, for example, Jürgen Klopp if it's at Liverpool FC. So that's the way I'm helping the teams.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't expect that you were also working with them on sort of the defensive aspect of it. When I imagined what you were working on, it was more their throw-ins themselves. It's interesting to find out that you're also helping with them, how they sort of defend throw-ins.
Yeah, you can say everything you can imagine around a throw-in at a football match. I'm working with that. I've been working with that professionally since 2004, so for 16 years. So everything you can imagine happening at the pitch, I'm working with that, but I'm also working with the ball boys, the ball girls. I'm also, in some clubs, I'm also working on how can we change the stadium itself so it's better for the throw-in. So everything you can imagine around the throw-ins, I'm working with that.
I mean, this might kind of take us off on a little bit of a tangent, but that's really fascinating to me. So what exactly, sort of how are you changing? If we take Liverpool, for example, have you done anything specific to Anfield that's changed either how the ball boys or ball girls approach their work, and also in terms of the layout of the field, if it's the sort of advertising hoardings or anything else?
Yeah, first of all, I've been working a lot with with the ball boys, ball girls, not directly myself, but I've educated the staff in what to tell the ball boys and ball girls. So one of the most important things is to get the ball fast when you have a throw-in. So and that can be a big difference between having the ball after 2.5 seconds or having it after 5.5 seconds. So that's one of the things. And then I'll say I've also been measuring Anfield regarding the run-in and so for the throw-in. But I'll say that's more important if you have a team who are really depending on long throw-ins. And in Liverpool FC, we're not really using the long throw-in as a set-piece weapon. But for example, FC Midtjylland, who are also playing against Liverpool FC in the Champions League group here, I've been working with them for many years, and we FC Midtjylland are doing a lot of long throw-ins, and here we have changed the stadium itself, so they have a better approach to the running, and so yeah, you can work with a lot of things that it's not necessarily with the game or the pitch or the players to do. So yeah, there's a lot of things to do with the throw-ins.
Now you said that, I just picture you with a stopwatch with the ball boys and the ball girls, just having them do crazy conditioning sprints throughout like hours after hours, screaming at them, making them get the ball in faster.
Yeah, you're totally right. You could do that, but for me, it's more about awareness, to be ready to throw that ball, or to be aware of which player do want to have the ball, because in most teams it's only the fullbacks who are throwing. But if you see a Liverpool match, there are normally 6, 7, 8 different players throwing the ball. Of course, mostly the fullbacks. But often it's better that it's Sadio Mane who takes the ball, or Hendo also who takes the ball. So as a ball boy or ball girl, you have to be prepared to throw it to the right player. You can say at the moment there are no ball boys, ball girls, because we have the corona. The players have to pick the ball up themselves, unless it's like a player from the bench or one of the coaches who can get the ball. So, but in normal circumstances, the ball boys, ball girls have a really important role to play.
That's interesting. I was going to ask actually how maybe the sort of COVID protocols then have impacted what you do in terms of the sort of placement on the cones and every how that's being dealt with. So sort of partly that is question one. And then question two, do you then instruct the ball boys and the ball boys and the ball girls to respond less quickly when it's an opposition throw-in? Is that kind of gamesmanship come into it a little bit, or is that, I'm not allowed to say that, but is that also part of the tactic when you're the home side?
I always say to the ball boys, when the other ones gets a throw in, shoot it out of the stadium as far as you can. No, I'll say for me, it's really important that I'll always try to give the best options for both teams, even though I'm only coaching one of the teams, because I think it's a little bit about ethics. So I just want to make the game be better around the throw-in. So if a player from the opposite team wants to have the ball fast, I think a ball boy or ball girl should just throw it fast to this player. So for me, it's about raising the bar of the game itself. I think most of the things we can improve in football is around ethics and being fair to the other team or the opponents, the other players. So I think things like standing in front of the ball when the opponents have a free kick, or taking the ball, throw it away, shoot it away. I think you should, and I think it's for every team. I think it should give a yellow card. And why do I think it should do that? I don't know if you know the sport handball. It's very popular in Denmark, also many countries in Europe. And in handball, counterattacks are really important. And if there's like a free throw for the other team, if the player from the team who's the throw is against, if he's not putting the ball directly down to the ground and laid still, this player would get a 2-minute penalty, and that's not good. And the reason why is that counterattacks are so important in handball. So you're destroying the game if you're not giving the ball the same second, or if you throw it away. And it's the same with football. We've just developed such a bad culture around standing in front of the ball or shooting the ball away. And most of the counterattack opportunities is wasted. So I think that being fair is one of the most important parts of the game, and we're not really treating that well at the moment, because it's been a part of the culture. You're just doing that. And no, if you change the rule with giving a yellow card if you're standing in front of the ball, shooting the ball away, there'll be like 10,000 yellow cards in the first season, but they'll fall into place, and then we'll have a much better game. So back to your question with the ball boys giving the ball, I think you should just give the ball fast to the players who want to have it fast, no matter what team it is. So, yeah.
No, I think that's a good approach to have. It would be great if all the teams and all the players and all the coaches thought that way. I think the sport overall would be much better off. I thought another interesting thing you kind of mentioned there was that traditionally it's fullbacks taking throw-ins, but then when you look at a side like Liverpool, you might want it to be Sadio Mane or Henderson. How do you determine who the best player is to take a throw-in? Or the sort of, obviously, if it's a long, someone with the ability to actually take a long throw-in, that's a very particular skill. But just in terms of someone like Mane who maybe doesn't possess that aspect, how do you determine who the best person is?
The players determine it themselves. You can say in general, we can come into that later, but I'm working with a philosophy called the long, the fast, and the clever throw-in. And here we're talking about the fast throw-ins. And one of the most important things is to get the ball fast. But it's not only the player who's closest who has to get the ball, it's also the players around him who has to react fast. And then some people might think that, it's just all about throwing the ball fast. No, because one of the worst things you can do is throw the ball fast and then throw it into a pressure zone. So what you really want to do is that first players getting the ball really fast, seeing if there's a good option to throw it. If there's a good option, take it. If there's a bad option, then wait for the fullback. And that's what I'm coaching the players in, because you can not just say to the players, okay, take the ball fast. Is a good option, take it. If not, don't take it. So I have like hundreds of drills that's learning the players what is a good option, how to take it fast, how to react fast, how to see different kinds of space on the pitch. So you can say it's the players themselves who are determining who should take the throw-in, or if they should take it fast or have patience. And you can only learn the players that by educating them. It's not like learning them that on in a week or so, or just showing something on a board. It's like building it up from scratch by, first of all, of course, learning them to throw longer, as I do, learning them to throw precise, learning them about basic space creation, how to create space all around the pitch, and then also when to throw fast, when to have patience and wait. So that's like all the basic knowledge. So again, to go through the long, fast, and clever throw-in philosophy. First of all, the long throw-in, I'm working with the players' throw-in technique, how they can throw longer. I have 30 different technical parameters using video analysis. Most players are improving between 5 and 10 meters with my training, some up to 15 meters. And even though a team like Liverpool FC, we're not taking any long throw-ins towards the opponent's goal, it's really important to have players who are throwing as far as possible, because the longer you throw, the greater throwing area you have, then you can throw to more players. So even in clubs like Liverpool and Ajax, where we're not doing any long throw-in towards the opponent's goal, it's really important to coach that long throw-in. Then the fast throw-in, that's, again, as I mentioned before, know when to throw fast, react fast, but also how to mark the opponents fast, because that's also important, putting the right pressure, different kinds of pressure. And then it's also counterattack throw-ins. That's also the last part of the fast throw-ins, because you can't be offside and throw-in. So you can use that, not every time, but once in a while. And then the last part of my long, fast, and clever throw-in philosophy is the clever throw-ins. And here I'm working with 3 different zones, and I'm having approximately 50 different throw-in tools. So there are different options and tools in each zone. And again, as I mentioned before, you can't just say, okay, use this tool, and because they have to learn it all from the basics. So in general, you can say I'm raising the players' throw-in intelligence. And some analysis people on social media have said, if you just do like Liverpool did there, you can do the same. No, because I'm not putting situations up like a playbook in American football where you're only doing one thing. No, the players have all these different options, and on top of that, they're using their own fantasy and imagination. So you can say every play we do is like really unique play. It's just because the players have been trained to have really high throwing intelligence. And then I'm also using the players, what I call individual throw-in superpowers, because some players are fast, some players have a good first touch, some players are good at protecting the ball. So we can use these in different situations. So that was like a short explanation of my long, fast, and clever throw-in philosophy.
It's really fascinating. I have to say, like, it's a part of the game that I think probably most people, even who follow the game sort of really closely, probably never really think about, which is kind of interesting from a component of the game that, you know, I don't know how many throw-ins there are on average per match. I'm sure you probably do, but you know, such a key, sort of essential part of a football match that probably kind of goes unnoticed. Which maybe brings us on to another question. I know that there's been a degree of skepticism sometimes as to sort of how impactful your work can be. I've sort of read a little bit about what your reaction to that is, but how often is it that you either approach a club or sort of speak to people working elsewhere and they don't understand why you'd need a throw-in coach? And sort of what's your typical answer to someone who is skeptical about the impact it can have?
First of all, I'll say that this has really changed a lot. Of course, I've been a throwing coach since 2004, where I started with my first professional team in Denmark. And it was mostly like people in Denmark who were skeptical because it was only Danish people who knew about me. But when it was, I started in Liverpool FC July 2018, and it was like leaked to the press end of August 18. And of course, there was a lot of skeptical people there criticizing me, and that's okay. I'll come back to that later. But that has really changed from really a lot of people being skeptical to, I'll say, almost every person, doesn't matter if it's a fan, if it's players, if it's pundits, if it's head coaches, assistant coaches. There are like, I don't know, 5-10 people writing to me every day, like on LinkedIn or Facebook or direct mail, thanking me for the inspiration. So it's really been changing. And one of the really great signs is that rival fans from Liverpool FC, are beginning to saying, hey, we want a throwing coach too, or even we want the throwing coach from Liverpool FC. So that's a really good sign that times are changing. And I'm really happy about that. But in general, you can also say about criticism, skepticism, how do you handle that, or how have I handled that? I'm putting like criticism up in 3 different things. Like I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly criticism. And first of all, the good criticism, that's, we can't live without that. And I think that's perhaps the most important things in our lives, that people are questioning the things we're doing. And the good criticism is when I say it's constructive, where people are saying, hey, couldn't we do it in another way? That'll be good. And even though I'm probably the guy in the world who knows most about throw-ins, then I'm listening a lot to players, I'm listening a lot to the other coaches. And for example, one day Hendo said to me, I think it was last season, oh, couldn't we do that exercise instead of doing it directly into the pitch? Couldn't we do it in 45-degree angle to the pitch so it's more relevant for the match itself? And I said, hey, let me think about it. And I thought, hey, I think you're right, let's try it. And it was better. I had with Ajax last season, it was Christian Paulsen, assistant coach, who said, oh, fantastic drill, but I think it would be even better if we put in 2 small goals there. And I thought, hey, let's try it. And the drill was even better. So that's what I'm calling the good criticism. Then there's the bad criticism. And that's criticism where people like first are saying, oh, I don't really believe you, or I don't think it's worth to have throwing coaching. And then a lot of these people, if you're giving them some knowledge or asking them a question, for example, when I'm saying to people, some are saying, oh, throw-ins, it's only a small thing in football, it doesn't really matter. Then I'm saying, did you know that there are actually between 40 to 60 throw-ins in a match, and most teams have possession under 50% of the occasions when have a throw-in under pressure? And then most of these people are saying, hey, I didn't know that. And often they'll turn into like good connections, or you have a good feeling with them, or perhaps they'll even cooperate with you in the future. So we shouldn't. So if people are like questioning us in a way that's not necessarily constructive, you can often, make a lot of good things about that. So that's what I call a bad criticism. It can turn out good. And then the last thing is the ugly criticism, where people are only like after you, criticizing you to like earn money themselves or get famous themselves, or just to try to put you down, where it's really personal. And I tried that a couple of times with a few pundits like Andy Gray, like Steve Nicol, and I got the feeling they were not really interested in knowing anything about throw-ins or my work or what I do in Liverpool or other clubs. It was only a question about, okay, let get some more viewers because we're making fun of that throwing coach. And I'll just say that in both occasions it's really backlash. So so it's been giving me a lot of positive attention. So yeah, I think criticism, skepticism, it's fantastic. We're really it's a fantastic part of our life. But if it's so personal that it's like only to try to destroy you, you just have to brush it off, talk with some good people around you, and try to get through it.
Yeah, the Andy Gray one particularly is of interest because obviously the reasons why, getting sacked aside and things like that, they prided themselves on statistics and data and looking at the science of how things improve for like corners or average times this person scores from the penalty box. So it seems strange that you would then denounce the science of a throw-in or like seeing possession increased or something like that. That's a particularly strange one, I guess, to hear.
Yeah, first of all, you can say with that clip with Andy Gray and Richard Keys, you can say it was not very scientific. It was more, you can see the clip on YouTube. It's like, a throwing coach. They laughed like half the clip or so. And it's not. And it's really important for me to say it's not because you can't laugh of me, because often when I'm talking about myself, I'm referring to my job as the weirdest job in the world. When I'm doing a lot of talks too. I'm also like using a lot of humor around my job too. And beIN Sports could have been calling me and saying, hey, we've heard you've been a throwing coach. We think it's totally crazy. And they could also say, okay, we laughed when we heard it. But hey, but we want to invite you to the studio because first of all, we think it could be entertaining. But we really want to know what is this throwing coaching you're doing. We could have had perhaps one of the best clips ever in sport television where we both have laughed, because it seems like Andy Gray is a guy who likes to laugh too. But we could also have been giving a lot of knowledge to the audience. But instead they choose to, for me, go the wrong path. So we could have changed that, but yeah, it was too late. And 14 days after, when I think Andy Gray and bIN Sports had so much criticism to them, they bIN Sports contacted me and said, hey, we want to have you in the studio now. Andy Gray still think it's I don't know how they mentioned, but it's crap, this throwing coaching, and Richard Keys think it's all right. But I said no to them at that point because I couldn't really see myself winning there, because as long as there was one in the studio whose only interest was to I felt make fun of me. So I just said no, even though a lot of people would have seen it.
Yeah, or you can just add yourself to the list. So you can throw in coaches and female linesmen, things that Andy Gray doesn't want in modern football. So he's
I understand where you're coming from too, because when you say those statistics about how many throw-ins there are and that the possession is actually almost under 50%. Being an American, I always like to relate it back to some American sports, and I think if you were a basketball team and you were giving up as a defensive team rebounds to the offensive team more than 50%, they'd be so heavily criticized for their bad rebounding skills. Or if it were hockey and you had, a really bad face-off percentage, that team would be heavily criticized. And, those are happening at about the same rate that you're saying throw-ins are happening. So it's crazy to me that it's been so overlooked that a spot where you can retain possession 70, 80, almost 90% of the time, and teams are forfeiting it to 40%. And that's not being addressed. That's, that is pretty shocking to think about.
Yeah, you're totally right. And you can say, I think the only reason why I've been a throwing coach, and the only reason why it's now happening with the throw-ins in the football world is because I'm not coming from football. Yeah, you can say I've been playing in the highest Danish U19 league, and also played like with great players like Thomas Grønnemark, who really later played for Real Madrid. So, but pretty early in my around 20 years old, I changed to athletics and came on the Danish national team. There were 6 years. I was 4 years on the Danish national bobsled team, and I've been playing, like you're saying, been playing a lot of street basketball. Been doing that my whole life. Also been playing in a club 1 year and seeing, I think, almost sometimes even more NBA than I'm seeing football. So I've been coming with this like other approach than normal football coaches. And when I started in 2004, it was only as a long throwing coach, because it was in the middle of my bobsleigh period. And I thought, hey, if I can make a good long throw in myself, can't I teach other players to do it? So I went down to my local library when I came home from that bobsleigh trip to find a book about throw-ins, but there was nothing at all, and I couldn't believe it, because at that time we played football for like 130 years and so many situations. So I started as a long throwing coach after making a course after 6 months or so with my first pro club in Denmark. And then like 3 years later, I've been coming to a club where when I was hired, they were really like into long throw-ins, and then the head coach was fired, and then I had another coach who don't want to do long throw-ins, and I was pretty frustrated. Even though I was paid, I couldn't really train the long throw-ins. So I watched a match with this team, and they had just a pretty normal, and that was in 2007, a normal throw-in in the middle of the pitch, and they lost the ball. And then they lost the next one and the next one again. And I was totally in shock, because I thought it was only like youth players and amateur players who were so bad at a pretty normal throw in the middle of the pitch. And then I started seeing all the football matches I could. And I was totally in shock, because it was the same, not only in Danish Superliga, but also Premier League, Champions League, Bundesliga, CAR, La Liga. So low level of throwing intelligence, and it was pretty easy for me to see that they had no strategy. And it's a little bit the same now. Of course, now it's beginning to change a little bit also with the clubs I'm not coaching, but it was the same. No movement from the players, and because of no movement from the players, the fullback is getting frustrated, and then you're just throwing the ball down the line into a small box, where I call it. Then it's a headed duel, and then there's much bigger risk that you're losing the ball than keeping the ball. And it's still happening. It's still happening in the Premier League, still happening in the Champions League. So that's also a reason why with Liverpool FC, in the 17-18 season before I came to the club, Liverpool FC had a possession on 45.4% on throw-ins under pressure, where the players are marked. And Liverpool were only number 18 out of 20 in the Premier League, third last. But in my first season, 18-19 season, we went to a possession on 68.4% and went from number 18 to number 1 in the Premier League. Last season, the 19-20 season, we scored 14 goals after throw-in situations. And it's not long throw-ins towards the opponent's goal. We're not doing that at Liverpool. It's throw-ins from all over the pitch where we're doing something in training. This season, until now, it started late, as you know. We scored 5 goals. After throw-in situations, and actually the 3 of the 5 goals were in the 3 first Champions League games here in this group. So against both Atalanta, Ajax, and Midtjylland. So throw-ins are important. So yeah, again, back to what you said, I was totally shocked. Now we've been playing football for approximately 140 years, and I'm 100% sure if I hadn't come to Liverpool in 2018, we could have perhaps have waited 10 years more to get that, what I call perhaps a throw-in revolution now. So it's a little bit scary, but the football sport has just developed really, really slow. It's only like the last 2-3 years with all the data and analysis that it's really like going way up there.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And similar to what Frank touched on, it is really because if you do think about basketball, how much thought gets put into inbound plays, or in rugby, how much thought gets put into a line out. It is strange that football took so long to catch up. And I think also most football fans will, at least, even if they haven't thought about the importance of throw-ins, I think one thing everyone will have seen is that moment of frustration in a stadium when they feel like there's no movement from a throw-in. And you'll see the sort of home supporters almost, sort of groan and kind of turn on their team a little bit when they see that there's just nothing going on. So when you see a bad throw-in, do you usually attribute that? I'm sure it's a balance, but do you attribute it more to the lack of movement from the players in the pitch or to the actual throw-in taker themselves?
Oh, it's a combination of everything. It's, first of all, you have to go to the throw-in taker. Of course, if he's throwing really short, it can limit his opportunities of throwing to a teammate. For example, when I started in Liverpool, Andy Robertson could only throw 19 meters, but he improved his throw into 27 meters. So even though he'll never be the world's best at the long throw-in, he has improved his throwing area, like the half circle, with more than 500 square meters. So first of all, you have to have a really good length on your throw. Then you have to throw precise as a thrower. Then you also have to know when to throw fast and when to have patience. And then you also have to be able to see the space. So that's the throw itself. And then again, out to the players on the pitch. So you can say that it's really hard for the thrower to see the space if there's no space created. So you have to work with that space creation. But it's also important, for example, that when you have a throw-in, that it's not only the thrower who reacts fast, but also the 2, 3, 4, 5 players closest to him who are also reacting fast. That's also helping a lot. And then you can also say it's also up to the head coach manager to train the players, weekly with the throw-ins. You don't have to use 1.5 hours, but you can go very far with 15, 20 minutes. And here I'm not talking about throw-in technique. I'm talking about throw-in-related drills where you are working with create space. That's it looks really a lot like normal football coaching. So it's also up to the coach to focus on it the whole year, because if you're only looking at it in preseason, then they have been forgetting everything in 2 months. So I think the responsibility is both the throw-in taker, the players out there, but also the coaches to make the players sharp around the throw-ins.
So when you talk about Robertson going from 19 to 27 meters in his throw, do you accredit that just to you giving them the proper technique, or is there also you kind of providing drills to develop that strength? Because when I think of footballers, I think a lot of times that, they're endurance athletes, so maybe they don't have that fast twitch, explosive movements that you would expect from a throw. So is that something where you're also giving them drills to kind of build that muscle, or is it mostly just that they have the technique completely wrong?
Oh, it's mostly the technique, and most players are either having a bad or really bad throw-in technique. And of course, I can understand that because they've never learned to take a throw-in efficiently. So again, most players improving 5 to 10 meters, some up to 15 meters over a period with my throw-in techniques and video analysis. Of course, you can do something physical, but I'll say the technique is perhaps 90% or so. And again, if I have to do something physical, first of all, I'm always talking with the physical coach of the team, because I'm not with the players every week. So I'm coordinating with him or her there. And then I'll also say if I have to choose between strength and flexibility, I'll choose flexibility every day. Of course, if you can combine flexibility with fast twitch fibers and do something there, of course, it's good. But flexibility is the most important physical part. And one of the reasons is that you can say the longer you can take your upper arms behind your head when you're doing the throw-in movement, the longer work way you can have and the more power you can put on the ball. Of course, there's a lot of different technical things, and it's so shoulder flexibility is really, really important. Of course, also lower back and back in general. And so, but for me, it's 90% technical improvement. So, and one of the reasons is also we have to remember they're also football players. It was another thing if they had to go to the Olympics in throw-ins, because then you'll probably build a lot of muscles on them, even though they'll look a little bit perhaps like javelin throwers or so, not like shot putters. But you also have to remember that if you gain, even though it's muscle, if you gain perhaps 5 kilos too much in some areas of your body, you can sometimes be slower, but also sometimes it's harder for you to change direction. And so I'm not saying muscles are harming you as a football player, but I'm just saying too much muscle can harm you. So, but again, back to your question, it's 90% technique. I think that's the improvement. Yeah.
Just it's sorry, real quick. It's interesting that you mentioned javelin throwers, because I also did athletics at university, and I always remember javelin throwers, a lot of the drills they did looked pretty similar to almost a throw-in in football. A lot of times when they didn't have the javelin, they were using like small med balls, things like that. So I was wondering, have you ever looked into taking some of the drills that, other sports like javelin or other sports that do a throw-in like rugby, have you ever looked at incorporating some of their drills into some of the training methods that you have?
Yeah, of course. And I think that's my big strength as a coach, because one thing is that I'm analyzing, one thing is that I'm doing talks, but I can do it on the pitch. I've been playing football myself, highest youth level, been doing a lot of throw-ins myself. I'm taking a lot of things from athletics. I was a sprinter, but of course I looked a lot at the throwers too. I've been taking a lot of things from bobsleighing, and people might think, hey, what can you take from bobsleighing? First of all, we were very innovative on the Danish bobsleigh team. But we also did a lot of video analysis. We did several thousand video analysis of the starts every season. So I've been really trained in that. Then I'm taking a lot of things from basketball with space creation. It's not so much the inbound, because they have 95% possession or so, even though, of course, they have to train that. It's more like the space creation in open play in basketball. So I've been playing that. So, I can do it myself. It's not only a thing I've been reading in a book. So I think that's my big strength. So that I'm putting things in, and it's not only from sports. I'm also looking at animals. For example, birds. If you're looking at birds with the awareness from like birds who are, on one hand, want to get some food. On the other hand, they're looking after the predators. And so you can also take some things in there with the awareness in football around fast throw-ins. And so sometimes if I'm looking at a piece of art in a museum, it could be a painting. I'm looking at some lines, and then suddenly I see a football pitch inside that paint, and I'm seeing some drills, some patterns, and of course sometimes I'm also sometimes saying, okay, I couldn't use that at all. It's not like every thought I have is totally genius, but often I'm thinking, hey, maybe it could, maybe I could use that too. So for me, I'm I have total open challenge, inspiration, not only from different areas, sports, arts, nature, but also try to keep my channels open for inspiration from players, staff, coaches. But also in a podcast like this, sometimes there's a question where I can think, hey, I haven't really thought about that angle. So I think, I try to do that.
Hopefully we'll give you some inspiration then, and next time Liverpool score, we can take some credit for it.
Yeah, I'll credit you for sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you're a true sportsman if you're seeing the game-winning play for a Champions League final in a piece of Picasso or something like that. I like that. Some people have an emotional response. You're in there drawing up plays for the next match.
Yeah.
One thing are there other throw-in coaches? Are you sort of one of a kind, or do you see, and maybe it's a result of the success that you've had, are you starting to see other coaches appear specializing in that?
No, I've never heard about any other throwing coaches in the world, and I'm not sure there'll be so many. I think it'll be more like assistant coaches, general set-piece coaches, head coaches, managers who are taking my knowledge and use it in their training. One of my biggest goals, or perhaps the biggest goal, is to change football with the throw-ins. Of course, it's totally fantastic to win the Champions League and the Premier League with Liverpool FC. If I told myself that as a kid, I'll probably been saying I was totally crazy. It'll never happen, but it has happened. So it's like a fairy tale. It's like a dream for me. But my biggest goal is to change football. So we have much better throw-ins. And it's not only in the biggest leagues. I want to change throw-ins from also, for the kids, for the youngsters, for the coaches who are, coaching youth players, for amateur players. And because I think there are so many awful throw-ins in the game, and probably even worse in youth football. And you can say, oh, is it just because you want to score more goals, more possession? No, of course, that's one of the things, because it just makes a better football game. But if you knew how many people have had bad experiences with throw-ins when they were kids or youngsters, I'm talking to so many adult people, and many of them are also retired from football because they're like 40 or 50 or so. And they're saying to me, once upon a time, I had an interview with a journalist, and it was in Denmark and outside on the pitch because he had to take some photos too. And he said to me that he was a fullback when he played, but he was so awful at the throw-ins, and he was getting so nervous every time he had to take a throw-in, and he had to take a lot because he was a fullback. And it slowly took away his joy of football, because he didn't know what to do, and the coach was just screaming and do this and so. And then we just for fun, it was only like long throw-in technique because it was only us two. Then I just polished a little bit with his technique, and he improved 8 meters on 15 minutes. It was not so much that he improved. Yeah, it was not so much that he improved the meters, but you can just see on him that he just, even though he wasn't playing football anymore, it was just like something, came into place, because he had so thousands of bad experience with throw-ins. And there are so many players, kids, youngsters, amateur players, who hate to take throw-ins because it's a hard situation. They're not educated. So my biggest dream is to change football. And the way I want to do that is I'm at the moment writing a book about throw-ins. So because at the moment it's really hard for youth and amateur coaches to afford that I can visit their clubs all around the world. So when I'm publishing my books about throw-ins, there'll also be online courses, so that a pretty normal football coach can afford. So when I'm publishing that, I think that's perhaps the thing I'm looking most forward to in my throwing career, because then I know I'm making a difference now, but that'll be the day where I can make a real big difference for people.
Yeah, that's really, I spent 3 years coaching a sort of youth girls football team. And apart from telling people to move and give the throw and taker options, I don't think we ever paid any attention to what they were doing. I think that was it.
You're part of the problem, Eddie. Part of the
definitely.
problem.
It was the same for me at the kind of
starts at the youth
level. At the schoolboy level in football as well, it was just, you would just be pulled up on foul throws. So you would just be told foul throw, and you're like, I haven't been told how to do it. And they just say, well, just throw it over your head. And it's not that simple. Then they say, oh, it can't be a punch throw. So you've got to actually put your arms back in order to do it. And it disheartens you. It becomes such an inconvenient part of the game that you never want to do it. I was curious about when you said you want to change football and the perception of throw-ins. And I wonder, do you think the international stage, seeing somehow success of throw-ins at a World Cup would do it? Or do you think more people need to go into these kind of grassroots levels and put importance on throw-ins? I guess it might be chicken or egg, really, to know where it comes. But do you think the international stage might help if they see these incredible, world record breaking throws that lead to goals, and then they're suddenly so inspired by these people? Do you think that's one way of it happening?
Yeah, of course. One of my big dreams is also coach a team to the World Cup. And of course that will help getting focused on throw-ins at a World Cup. But again, I don't think it's so necessary anymore, because, most football coaches in the world have seen the success from Liverpool FC. And even though throw-ins are only a part of it, most coaches who are like trying to be better, they have also heard about the throw-ins been doing in Liverpool, that I'm doing it too. So I think it's only a matter of time that it's only a question about that I have to publish my book. And because there are so many people writing to me every day, when do you publish the book? When do you publish the book? And I'm saying, I don't know really. Let's see, depends on. But to be honest, it's also a question for me about right now. I'm earning really well with the big clubs. I'm the only one in the world, so it's also a little bit strategy for me. When will I publish my book? So. Because I could publish in 3 months or so. I've been writing really much, and I know what to write and what not to write. So perhaps I'll publish in a year. Perhaps it'll be the next summer again.
I like that, Thomas. I like the idea that you've got all the secrets, you've got all the info. Keep hold of it. I completely understand it. You're the only person in the world, like you said at the start. You are probably the world's most knowledgeable person about throw-ins. I can fully see you keeping this information.
Yeah, you're totally right, and I'm thinking that myself. But I'm in this like dilemma that, on one hand, you can say I'm getting a lot of attention. I'm working with some of the best teams in the world, having success, earning well. But on the other hand, I also know that I can make a like gigantic difference for so many people. So, it's a little bit hard when to do it and when not to do it. So, it's also a question about I'm not a wealthy man, even though I've been earning okay the last 2 years. I'm having what I should have like in life. I have a wife. I have 2 kids. One of the best things I know is just to have a cup of coffee, talking with good people. So you can also say you're coming to one stage where you have had enough success. So other things are meaning even more. So again, you're totally right. I can follow you with your argument there. I've been thinking that myself. But there are these 2 like pillars who are influeing on me and my decision about publishing. So let's see when it will happen.
So I kind of just had a more fun question, I guess. You said it's great working with all these top clubs and all that. What's one of the neat things about working with a top club that you wouldn't expect? Is it great to go in there and see they have these amazing facilities, or do they have like top-notch private chefs? You love going to the Liverpool's training facility because you're going to get the best lunch you've had in months, or is there something about that aspect that's really cool, that you get to work with these super wealthy clubs that other people aren't experiencing?
Yeah, first of all, I'll say I love my job now. If people ask me now, would you rather be full-time in one club or be freelance and then have like the last 2 seasons I've been having like 8 clubs or so per season? I'd rather be freelance because I'm traveling so much. And even though, of course, I'm working a lot, every day I'm normally having 4, 6, 8 hours for myself. And when I have that, when I'm not like analyzing or preparing the next day, now it's the Corona period, but normally I'm just walking around the city, seeing everything, museums, churches, nature. So I love that part. So that's one thing about traveling to so many different clubs. But then again, the clubs themselves, I should say. First of all, let's take Liverpool. Now we just moved to Kirkby, but the best food I ever had, that was like in Melwood, because there are so many different things to choose from, and the quality is just like top. So that's perfect. And then also like traveling on training camp. I've been in Evian in France twice with Liverpool, and I've also been in Marbella with Liverpool. I've been in Austria with Ajax, Spain with Ghent, Florida with Atlanta United, Qatar with Ajax, and things like that. But if I had to tell about the first training camp with Liverpool FC, that was like end of July, early August 18. It was Evian, and we lived in this Hotel Royal. And normally I have tried to live on an okay hotel before, but when I came into the reception, I came myself traveling from Denmark. I saw the hotel rooms, and they were like from 700 to 7,000 euros per night. So, and it was like, my own room and like big balcony, like panorama view over the lake, and I could see all the way over to Switzerland, to Lausanne. We had our own total floor for ourselves, and also outside we had our own like level where no one else could come, and security. And so even though I've been traveling a lot with athletics and bobsleighing, it's never been like luxurious like so. And I'll also say it's not the important part for me. But hey, when you are there, you might as well enjoy it. So
it's a nice perk.
I just looked up that hotel. I can tell our listeners it looks absolutely amazing. It's probably on a lot of people's focus boards for like one of their goals in life to stay there.
Terrible perks of the job.
Yeah.
You kind of touched on, because you work with multiple clubs at any one time, and I assume, I mean, maybe if you tell us the clubs you're currently working with, I don't know if you always can, but some of these clubs play against each other. I think you're working with two clubs. I don't know if you're still working with Liverpool. You've worked with Ajax in the past. I don't know if you still are, but when they play against each other, do they ever give you a bit of pressure to sort of reveal secrets about what the other club is doing? And also, do you feel almost a little bit of a kind of conflict of interest, in the sense that you're helping them both in an attacking sense and a defensive sense, and you're sort of pinning your advice kind of against itself?
You can say I haven't really tried it with Liverpool here, because this Champions League group with Ajax, Midtjylland, and Liverpool. I'm still working at Liverpool. That's my third season, but I worked with Ajax last season, and I'm not working with Midtjylland this season, but the last 10 years I worked with Midtjylland. And it's just like, if I'm working with a club and I'm not working with other clubs, of course I'm not giving any information. And if I've been working with, for example, two clubs in the same group, let's say I've still worked with Ajax, then I wouldn't have been giving any information on, the other clubs. So that I try to be really professional there. I tried it once in Denmark, where I had like two clubs from the Danish Super League, FC Midtjylland and then Viborg. And it was a bit like schizophrenic, if you can say that. Oh, that was a fantastic throw-in. Oh, bad marking. So, but that's the way it is when you're a freelance throwing coach. The clubs themselves have the option to, pay me for only coaching them in their league. And if they don't want to do that, I can coach other teams. That's just the way it is. And you can say, back to your question, who you're coaching this season, still coaching Liverpool FC. I'm also coaching, that's actually my third season, a Belgium team from the second league, Royal Union Saint-Galois or so. They are currently number one in the second league in Belgium. So I'm not only coaching like first league teams, Champions League teams, and so. Then I'm having a couple of secret teams I can't reveal at the moment. And then I'm also like having, first of all, probably going to sign with another Champions League team in a short while, in a few days. And then I'm also having several requests from MLS. Let's see if we get a signing there in the next weeks. And then I'm also, it's also having like communication with teams from South America too. So you can say it's actually the whole world who are interested in my service. And because the clubs can also see that even though I'm pretty well paid, the reward they're getting for my help is like 100 or 1,000 times bigger. So yeah, so and that's the good thing with data, because if I'd made these wrestlers with Liverpool FC like 20 years ago, they couldn't really measure it. And then it was just, he's just a throwing coach, so what? So But of course, it's a little special with the Corona period here. Of course, I can travel to countries where it's allowed to travel. And right now I've been having like a period for months or so where I couldn't come into England. But I can travel to other countries. Of course, I have to take care of quarantine and having Corona tests and everything like that. So, but I'm pretty open. So I expect this season to again come up to these like 8 or 10 different clubs around the world.
Wow. It's impressive. I guess that kind of maybe brings us on to, because I know you'll be eager to get off to watch the Liverpool match tonight. We had a few questions from our listeners when they knew that you were coming on. And one question that we did have was, if you could work with one specific player or one specific club, is there a club that you kind of admire their approach to throw-ins even though you haven't worked with them? Or do you look around and you think that without that specialization, almost any club would be suitable for you to step in and help them?
Or is there a team you watch and you just you like shake your head, you can't even look at the screen anymore because it's so bad? You're desperate for them to call you.
No, I'll say that I have stopped doing that with my head every time there's a bad throw in, because I was starting getting problems with my neck, so I'm just like sitting still now. So no, I'll say most clubs, that's like, I don't know, 95%, they can really improve their throw-ins a lot. Then there are a few teams who are beginning to learn a little bit. I'm not really saying any specific team I really want to coach, but I'll say I haven't been coaching in La Liga yet. I haven't been coaching in Serie A yet. So that'll be totally cool. And of course, some of the top teams there could be pretty cool too. But then I just like to travel the world and see the world. I'm so lucky at the moment that I can do what I love the most, coaching throw-ins. It's my hobby. It's my passion. I can get okay paid, and I can travel the world, meet a lot of fantastic people. That couldn't be better. So perhaps some teams from Serie A, La Liga, and then just all around the world. Doesn't matter where it is. I just want to inspire people.
Okay, that's a good answer. And I guess along the similar lines, if you think of like a player, say like Rory Delap, who would give you just a huge weapon in terms of the long throw, would you rather work with a team that had, and you'll probably give me a really diplomatic answer and say either one, but would you rather work with a team that did have just a long throw weapon in that style, or a team maybe more like what you're having to do with Liverpool, where you're working more on the fast throwing?
I'll say that I'd rather work with clubs who are focusing, on the fast and clever throwing. I'll still be doing the long throwing coaching because it's just so important to get that throwing area up. But I'll say that if I have to choose between a club who only focuses on the long throwing and then, the fast and clever throw-ins, I'll prefer fast and clever throw-ins. And one of the reasons is that I started developing this long, fast and clever throwing philosophy in 2007. And right up to until 2018, where Jürgen Klopp called me directly, I've been coaching a lot of clubs, also, for example, in Brentford in England, for 2 seasons. But all the clubs I've been coaching, they only want my knowledge around the long throwing. So I was just so frustrated. So, and right now I'm sometimes also saying no if there's a team who only want to do the long throwings, nothing else, because it's like only using like 10% of the team's potential. It's, of course, I still love to see a really good long, hard and fast flat throwing that's really dangerous, and I can improve most of the players again with 5 to 10 meters, some up to 15. So if there are some clubs out there who want to use the long throwing as a weapon, I'm really open to listening. And I also say that I think that Rory Delap was fantastic because Stoke was really set up for these long throw-ins. But again, I'll prefer to work with the teams who are focusing on the throw-ins all around the pitch because it gives much more to them.
Yeah, That's interesting, actually, because I remember in the early 2000s, you had like Bolton under Sam Allardyce as well, like using the long throw just to cause havoc and really mess up really kind of good looking teams like Arsenal with that approach. But then you've got Rory Delap at Stoke. I remember vividly Dave Challoner at Tranmere Rovers, and the incredible cup runs. They actually beat Liverpool. It was John Aldridge beat Liverpool with Tranmere with Dave Challoner, and they basically just went to League Cup finals, giant killed, all because of the long throw. And I remember growing up, and it just caused havoc, and it really, in a way, revolutionized the game, because you had these teams playing on the ground constantly, good tick-attack, or I guess football. And then all of a sudden, Sam Allardyce comes in, Tranmere Rovers, the Stoke team as well, and they force teams to be more competitive in the air, have taller players, slow it down in a way. So that's particularly interesting to hear.
Yeah, I'll say, again, I think I mentioned before, but like totally thumbs up to Stoke what they did then, because they had a really specific playing style, and they like went all in on the set pieces, especially the throw-ins, scored a lot of goals, but they also had, as I remember, 8 players in the start 11 who was 1.90 meters or above. So it's like giants, all of them. And you can also say that I could easily make Liverpool score 10 goals on long throw-ins in the Premier League every season, because I know he's injured right now, but we have Joe Gomez, and he's been throwing 37.20 in a test. That's approximately the penalty spot in the air, or perhaps even longer. And we saw he assisted that goal against Croatia in the Nations League a couple of years back. But you also have to remember that if you want to score 10 goals on long throw-ins, and you can do that. I had 4 seasons with FC Midtjylland where we scored 35 goals, like 9 goals per season. One season with AC Horsens, we scored 10 goals in the Danish Super League. You can do that with Liverpool FC too, but you have to remember, if you want to score 10 goals on long throw-ins, you'll probably have to take 10, 12, 15 long throw-ins in a match. And you want to see Liverpool stop up and take 30 to 45 seconds to take 10 to 15 long throw-ins in every match? No, because it's not Liverpool's playing style. It's more like fast, attacking, energy. So when you have to look and think about, do you want to use long throw-ins as a set-piece weapon then and score a lot of goals, then you have to take a lot of long throw-ins. Okay, you can also go a little bit in the middle and say, okay, we are perhaps taking 1, 2, or 3 long throw-ins in a match, and that's it. So, but you also have to look at the playing style and see, is that a philosophy you'll use? And if you want to do it, it's okay for me. I have nothing against teams who are going all in on long throw-ins. You just have to build your team up to that. So, yeah.
So we have another question from our listener. This is from an American listener, so he obviously wants to sound super educated about the sport. But he said, in the late 90s, when the back pass rule modification was extended to goalkeepers, it had a massive impact on throw-ins in the defensive third. Is there any additional tweaks or changes to the current throw-in laws that you'd like to see changed or altered?
No, not really. I think the throw-in laws in soccer, I'll rather say soccer when it's American who's asking. I think they're pretty fine. I heard a lot of people in Denmark, because in Denmark they're taking a lot of long throw-ins. A lot of people have been saying that, we don't want to wait 30 or 45 seconds. Let's have a throw-in stop clock, so you can only use 15 seconds or so. But I think the throw-in rules are really fine. I actually think they're perfect. Some people, for example, Arsene Wenger, have been saying, we want kick-ins instead because it's hard to take a throw-in. But the only reason why it's hard to take a throw-in is because the teams are not working with the throw-ins and they're not seeing what tools they can use. And so I actually think it will be a big, big, big mistake to use kick-ins instead, because you'll get one of two things. Either you'll have long kick-ins, and we don't want to see that. We'll have a lot of long balls. Or we'll have these like kick-in situations, like a short corner where you can't go near the kick-in taker. And then it'll be a little bit like in futsal. We have a lot of start passes that are unpressured. And what's really great with throw-ins is that we have a lot of pressure situation, but can you release these pressure situations with movements to create space? It's fantastic entertaining, but you can also look into the different ways of creating pressure. And can you get out of pressure? You'll have fantastic situations, transitions, shifting play, playing in more open space. And if you're looking at every sport like hockey, basketball, American football, basketball, if you don't have pressure there, you'll never have fantastic situations. So for me, like using kick-ins instead of throw-ins, that'll be the biggest mistake ever. And it's not because of me, because I'm a throwing coach. I'll find another thing to do. But we have to take this road about making the players better, also the coaches, educating them in throw-in situations. And then it's much more entertaining. Then my goal is that we, in 5 or 10 years, when I've been publishing my book, and so there's a guy sitting in the couch, and his mate is going into the kitchen for a beer, and then he's yelling, "Hey, there's a throw-in, come and see," because we are just looking forward. How will they create space now? It's a little bit the same in basketball. We're looking, how will they set that three-point shooter up, or how will they set the center up inside by creating space for him? So it's the same with the throw-in. So back to your question, I don't think we have to change any throw-in rules. It's more a matter about educating coaches, players, and giving them more knowledge so we can have much better use of these situations.
Great answer. Yeah, I think you also addressed, we had a follow-up question from another listener about the Arsene Wenger pushing for the kick-in instead of the throw-in. So you got answered two questions in one there. So that was pretty good.
Thanks.
Maybe as a final question from me, at least, when you look around world football at the moment, is there a single player that you watch him take throw-ins and you're sort of really impressed by, or because it's more of a team mentality, does the individual not stand out?
I'll say that my answer now is really subjective because I'm coaching them myself, but I've been asked several times who are the best throw-in takers in the world, and I'll say Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. It's both because they've been improving their throw-ins. It's not because they're one of the best long throwers, but they've been improved their throws. They're really precise, but they really know when to throw the ball fast, when to have patience. But they're also seeing space. But of course, it's also easier for them to see space being created when they're actually being space created, because being fullback on a team where the players are not moving, that's a really tough job to make a good throw in. And you also have to remember that, like last season, we scored 14 goals after throw-in situation. Already now, this early stage of the season, 5 goals. So like a little bit over 1.25 season, it's been like 19 goals after throw-in situation, and I can't remember how many Trent and Robo did each, but I think they assisted all of them. And to be able to see that kind of space, it's you really have to have a high throw-in intelligence. So even though the answer perhaps is a little bit boring, then I'll say that the two I admire the most with throw-ins are Robo and Trent.
If they're the best, and they're the best. I mean, there's no, and also, I guess if you're the one helping them out, it's natural that your coaching might also have a small impact on that anyway. So, I think that's a fair answer.
If I was put up in a hotel like that as well, I'd say them. I'd say Liverpool players too.
Yeah.
So I guess my last question is a little more random one. How scary is it to be a bobsledder?
It's really scary. Yeah, it's really scary. Actually, I came from athletics there. The reason why I changed from athletics was not because I had a low in athletics. It was because I actually set personal records on 100 and 200 meters in 2002. But I had moved to a small town in Denmark because I met my wife. And I don't know if any of you have tried to do something stupid because of love, but I moved to this small city, training alone. So it was only like even though I've never been better in athletics, it was suddenly only numbers on a paper. So I want to change to a team sport. And there was this Danish bobsleigh team who started in 1998, and followed them a little bit because they also trained in the summer on athletics tracks too, where I was training in. I was fast. I was the fastest guy in Denmark on 100 meters that time. I was strong, and I was also heavy at that time, weighing 91 kilos, really heavy for a sprinter. So I knew I had the physical abilities to be a really good bobslayer, but I was really afraid, can I be a bobslayer? Because I've always been afraid of roller coasters. Always as a kid, my mom said, hey, you have to try the roller coaster. It's funny. But I was just puking every time after that. So, I was so scared. So I trained all summer with the bobsleigh team in 2002. And then I had to make my first run down the ice track in October 2002 in German Königssee. And you have to remember, bobsleigh is going 130 to 150 kilometers in top speed. You're crashing sometimes. And I said, I just had to put the two-man sled. I said to the pilot, Tom, I don't know if I really dare to do this because I'm afraid of roller coasters. So, and suddenly, it was far away when we did the summer train, but suddenly I was standing on the top of that ice track. Then he bought a sled where the pilot could brake the sled. Normally it's the brakeman who has to do that. So I should only push the sled and sit down. And it was the wildest thing I ever done. It was like 100 times more wild than a roller coaster, but I didn't get sick of it. So, and I think I had the ability to cope with that, wildness in the bobsleigh. And I've seen a lot of big guys, much bigger than me, with much bigger muscles and much bigger mouths than me, before coming like, hey, bobsleigh, how can that's not a thing for me. It can't be so hard. So, and then after the first ride without crashing, they're saying never again in my whole life. So a lot of people are thinking, hey, bobsleigh, just like a roller coaster, it's 1,000 times more wild. But I could do it for 4 years. It was not like because I'm a tough person. I could just use some mental tools and so try to think about what will happen when I crash, or when we crash, what will I do? And I tried to crash several times, and also went to the hospital in Italy after a crash and so, but it learned me and all the other guys on the team a lot. We were traveling 20 weeks per year. We're traveling all Europe, Canada, the States, and we were together 24 hours, 7 days a week, most of the time 3 or 4 weeks in a row, then home 1 week in the winter season, then away again 3 or 4 weeks in a row too, and then on and on. So I'll say that a lot of people might not think it has a lot to do with being a throwing coach. But again, I picked the innovation from our bobsleigh team. I picked the video analysis. And also, I think it gave me a lot of, toughness. So I think it's been helping a lot when there's been a lot of people laughing about me. I know there are many things who are more dangerous than people laughing at you. So.
Yeah, I would say bobsledding is definitely one of those more dangerous.
If I've got a choice between a bunch of people laughing at me after this episode or me having to hop in a bobsled, I know which one I'm choosing. I'll take the laughter.
You said you never got sick of it, but did you ever just get sick?
No. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I didn't have any problems with my stomach. So yeah, sorry. But it's a cool sport if you can do it, if you can handle it.
Yeah, so, and it's interesting you talk about being a sprinter, because I know in the U.S. now they actually like to recruit sprinters to be on a bobsled team. So the most famous one now is Lolo Jones. She was recruited to be on the U.S. female, but one of my good friends is a Olympic shot putter, and he said that they used to have the sprinters kind of do this training test. It was like 3 or 4 exercises, and they would rate them, and if they ranked high enough, they would actually invite them to do the training and things like that. So it's kind of neat. I mean, it's a very strange transition, but I can see with the muscles and the speed and all that. So it's really cool.
Yeah, you're often using explosive guys, so both sprinters, as you say, but it can also be like shot putters, discus throwers, or people coming from weightlifting, and normally they'll push in the second position on the four-man sled because you only have to run in the second position 30, 35, maximum 40 meters, and you can say the fourth man, both in the two-man but also four-man sled, has to run 60, 70 meters, a little bit downhill too. So if you put a big shot putter there, he'll break the sled too much. So there are different kinds of types who are good at bobsleighing, but they all have to be explosive in one way or another. So yeah.
And maybe a last question, and hopefully one you've never been asked before. Which Liverpool player do you think would be the best bobslayer?
Oh, I think Virgil van Dijk will be so amazing because first of all, I think he's fast. He has really good top speed. He's also strong, and he's also pretty heavy. It's really important to say that if you're weighing 70 kilos, you'll never be a bobsledder in your whole life. You have to weigh at least like these 90s. Some gain some kilos and so. So Virgil van Dijk, because he's fast, he's heavy. He's also seeming like he's like mental tough too. He could be a bobsledder too. So yeah, I'll probably like to have Virgil on my team.
Great, interesting. Well, I guess we can. Unless Frank, Sam, do you have any final questions or?
No. All good for me. Thank you.
No, it's been a pleasure. This was great.
Yeah, really.
Thank you so much.
Suffice to say, I'm a convert now. Like I will be watching throw-ins far more meticulously than I ever have in my life.
Don't publish your book. You might see Samuel Jones, English throws coach, coming out now.
Damn. But I'll say, if I have to say the last thing myself too, then even though there might be a little time before I publish my book, I'm giving away some free throw-in drills on my homepage. It's my 4 best basic throw-in drills. It's about space creation in the near area of the thrower. You can use them from U10 up to pros. I'm also using them in Liverpool. You can get them on thomasgrønnemark.com/free. So already almost 3,500 coaches who have been picking the drills up like in a few months. So so the listeners are welcome to pick them up.
Perfect. Yeah. Sounds like a great resource. And I'm sure all of our listeners now will be paying much closer attention to throw-ins. I think, you might. So that's going to be interesting. We'll hopefully give people a new appreciation of maybe a part of the game that they hadn't really thought about. But thanks, Thomas. It's been great.
You're converting the world one podcast at a time.
Yeah. You're totally right.
Yeah. Thank you again. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Have a good one.